today's special home video edition of Sightings.
Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Are you seeing this thing zip back and forth?
They're out there, and sightings are on the rise.
Just like it was sliding through the sky, and it tilted like it was looking down at us.
It was a bright light that dimmed down to a white speck.
Ordinary people, astronauts, cosmonauts, even former presidents have all seen extraordinary craft doing extraordinary things.
I happened to glance out one time, and there against the black sky was a white object at about a 45-degree angle.
From the historic crash in Roswell, New Mexico, to unprecedented mass sightings going on right now in the skies over Mexico City, the evidence is mounting. We are not alone.
My Uncle Ted was standing more over here, kind of leaned over like this, and they were talking to this creature.
Are certain people being targeted for terrifying encounters with alien civilizations? Are rumors of bizarre crossbreeding experiments true?
I remember being on a table with my head turned away, not wanting to look at this creature.
Does the government know more than they're willing to tell us?
Our government has flat out lied to us for 40 years or more.
Terror, wonder, conspiracy, transformation. They're all part of the UFO experience.
Hello, I'm Tim White. Are UFOs real? You'll find out in this special report from Sightings. In the vast expanse of space lie wonders unimaginable. Galaxies yet to be discovered, planets unnamed and unexplored, exploded stars teeming with the building blocks of life. Scientists are devising new technology to reach these outer worlds, but perhaps someone or something out there has beaten us to it.
It was just a red flash of light.
It sounded like, well, a swishing sound, sort of.
Et alors, autour de cette forme, il y avait des petits lucioles rouges.
And I saw this big triangular-shaped 3 lights on each corner coming over my house.
Mysterious lights in the sky. They were like stars.
No sound. Just like it was sliding through the sky, and it tilted like it was looking down at us.
It was a bright light that dimmed down to a white speck and went back to a red light, down to a white speck, and then just disappeared.
You guys watching this inside?
It's going up. Going straight up.
Are these people sighting extraterrestrial spacecraft? Or is their imagination fueled by movies, books, and television simply misidentifying experimental aircraft?
Holy cow!
To answer these questions, we have to look back at the history of UFO sightings. Cave art in Australia and the western United States, painted at least 5,000 years ago by prehistoric civilizations, seems to resemble modern descriptions of creatures from outer space. Halfway around the world, a 13th century fresco inside a church in Yugoslavia includes a flying vehicle. It would be another 700 years before technology made flight possible. The modern age of UFOs began in 1947. Ex-military pilot Kenneth Arnold was flying his plane over the Cascade Mountain Range. He encountered several objects traveling at an extreme rate of speed. Although there are no photographs, Arnold had a drawing made of what he saw. His sighting triggered hundreds more that year across the United States. UFO mania reached a fever pitch in the summer of that year when the Army Air Force reported recovering a crashed saucer in New Mexico. The next day, the government claimed the disc was only the wreckage of a weather balloon. Sightings of unexplained phenomena weren't limited to just the United States. Marina Popovich, a Soviet pilot with over 100 airspeed and endurance records to her credit, had her first UFO encounter in the mountains of southern Russia.
My first contact with a UFO was a rather special experience. It was in the mountains, and I saw a sharp ray coming out of a huge sparkling ball.
Even some of the men and women who have been in space have reported seeing things they can't explain. Gemini and Apollo astronaut James McDivitt had his own encounter in June of 1966. While in orbit above the Earth, an unidentified object outside the window caught his attention.
I happened to glance out one time, and there against the black sky was a white object. Geometry of it was sort of like a beer can or a Coke can with a pencil sticking out one of the round edges at about a 45-degree angle.
What was it? McDivitt did snap a few pictures, but after turning the film over to NASA, the film mysteriously disappeared. Was it a clerical error, or evidence of a government conspiracy to hide the truth about what's really out there? A 1990 Gallup poll showed that nearly 50% of Americans believe in the existence of UFOs. This despite the fact that most photographs and film footage of the actual sightings are not very good. The images are scratched, out of focus, or the camera's just too far away to see things clearly. But with the advent of the home video camera, more and more people have captured unexplained phenomena on tape. This home video was shot over Las Vegas in early 1991. It shows 3 objects floating and diving in front of the mountains.
This is a spectacular maneuver. As you say, it goes in front of the mountains. It has the mountain as a backdrop, which gives you a fairly good idea of its distance.
July 2nd, 1947, Roswell, New Mexico. The time and place of the most significant event in UFO history. Something crashed at a remote sheep ranch and was confiscated by the military. But what crashed remains a mystery, fiercely debated for more than 50 years. Roswell, New Mexico. It's as quiet and peaceful today as it has been for decades. But on July 6th, 1947, that tranquility was shattered by a local newspaper headline. Air Force captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region. The story described wreckage of a flying disc found near a place called Corona, and it was based on a press release written by the public information officer at Roswell Air Base, Lieutenant Walter Haut.
This building here, building number 84, is a building I believe that they brought materials from the Corona crash and stored them in here temporarily.
The chief intelligence officer at the base, Major Jesse Marcel Sr., was sent out to the ranch to collect the crash debris and transport it to the Army Air Force headquarters for examination. In the meantime, newspapers all over the western United States picked up the story. But before Marcel had landed his plane and strange cargo, the Air Force issued a second bulletin.
By the time the B-29 with Jesse Marcel and some of the wreckage got to the headquarters 2 hours after they left in Fort Worth, Texas, the fix was already in to kill the story.
The second press release was far different from the first, saying the wreckage was actually from a weather balloon. Could the Army's top intelligence investigators have committed such a basic blunder, failing to recognize the mundane remains of a weather balloon when they first encountered it? No, says nuclear physicist and part-time UFO researcher Stanton Friedman, who's been investigating the Roswell crash for over a decade. He says that while Marcel was in the air, the Roswell base commander, Brigadier General Roger Ramey, got orders from Washington to cover up the incident.
And what he did was arrange for the wreckage of a weather balloon, the radar reflector on a weather balloon.
And for a while, the saucer saga was forgotten, and might have remained so if Major Marcel hadn't rekindled the fire in 1980. Just before he died, Marcel admitted that the weather balloon story had been fabricated to hide the truth. He told Walter Haut there really was a saucer crash.
He made statements to the effect that it was nothing of this world. It couldn't be bent, torn, cut, pierced, burned. He went through a whole list of them. He said, we just don't have the technology to produce material like I brought in from that ranch.
Stanton Friedman contends that wreckage from an unidentified craft landed 200 miles away from the Roswell site. Friedman and other ufologists believe that this proves that there was not one but 2 crashes over New Mexico on July 2nd, the result of a spectacular mid-air collision. And at the second site, there were survivors.
When I first came up to the craft, the creatures were laying like this in a line, side by side. And the live one was over here.
Gerald Anderson says he was 5 years old when he and his family came across the unearthly wreckage and bodies.
And my dad was kind of right about here, and he was sitting like this. My Uncle Ted was standing more over here, kind of leaned over like this, and they were talking to this creature.
Anderson's story matches that of others who were in the area at the time. With the help of hypnotherapy, he's been able to remember the encounter with startling detail. His description matches those from people who claim to have seen aliens. 4 feet tall, grayish skin, large eyes, long skinny arms and fingers. Anderson recalls 2 aliens were dead, a 3rd dying, and a 4th alien survivor seemed to be trying to communicate.
Then just suddenly he turned and he looked at me. And when that happened, all kinds of things just started happening inside my head. I started getting sensations of tumbling and falling and an awful loneliness, like there was no way he could possibly get back to where he came from.
Anderson says that within a matter of minutes, the military arrived, sealing off the area. The civilians at the site were threatened with bodily harm if they talked. Nevertheless, in the past 20 years, hundreds of witnesses have come forward, some daring to speak only on their deathbeds. Since Roswell ushered in the modern age of ufology, there have been more than 200,000 UFO sightings. Most are single craft witnessed by a single individual, making it virtually impossible for researchers to verify. But since 1991, ufologists have been documenting the largest mass sighting in history in the skies over Mexico City. The sightings began on July 11th, 1991. On that day, there was a total eclipse of the sun. One of the best places in the world to view the eclipse was Mexico City. And for the first time, because of the home video revolution, thousands of people pointed their video cameras to the skies.
Exactly at the time of the full solar eclipse, a disc-shaped craft appears over the city, hovers for over 30 minutes. 17 people on the ground recorded it on home video. And that's never happened before in the history of ufology.
When modern scientists forecasted the date of the historic solar eclipse, they weren't alone. Some believe the ancient Mayas also predicted the exact date of the eclipse more than 3,000 years ago. This Maya calendar made another startling revelation. It predicted that on the day of the eclipse, a new age of enlightenment would begin. It's referred to as the prophecy of the sixth sun.
The legend of the sixth sun, the new sun, signified by the great eclipse that just occurred, speaks of an opening of knowledge. The sixth sun indicates precisely the moment of its arrival.
Strangely, on the day of the eclipse, something did arrive in the skies over Mexico. Hundreds of those home video cameras that were shooting the eclipse got something completely unexpected. UFOs, unidentified flying objects, all videotaped by hundreds of different people. So far, more than 110 home videos have been verified as containing footage of unexplained craft.
It may sound difficult to believe in a city with almost 20 million people that practically every afternoon you can see a UFO.
Jaime Mason is one of the most respected television journalists in Mexico City today, hosting a Mexican version of 60 Minutes. Mason calls himself a former skeptic.
During the last year, thousands, and I would say hundreds of thousands of people have witnessed UFOs. What I feel is important as an investigative reporter is the fact that the evidence presented was never questioned. The credibility of the witnesses was attacked, not the proof that they presented.
People from all walks of life videotaped wave after wave of UFOs hovering in the sky. Sightings has obtained the exclusive U.S. rights to these historic tapes. One of the first to come forward with his home video was respected dentist Dr. Marco Antonio Rosas.
The people are definitely not nervous or afraid of the appearances of the UFOs. The people actually like the idea and feel that these appearances can bring some benefit to the Earth.
Since the eclipse, the UFO sightings have continued week in and week out, and the acceptance of the phenomena by government officials has made even the most reticent eyewitnesses willing to come forward. Padre Ferrer, a priest at a local Catholic church, has seen and recorded these mysterious UFOs.
Christ speaks of his kingdom as not being from this world, that his angels would help him. But these writings are very dangerous, and I don't like to use them. But I believe that there is a possibility. I believe there are a lot of possibilities. I came out to take a video of that pine tree against the light. When I came up, I saw the light appear over the mountain over there. It was not an ordinary light. It was blue and very intense. I've never been afraid of something like this. On the contrary, what I've been able to observe has been wonderful. Once a philosopher said, if God is outside of the truth, I'll stay with the truth. So I feel there is no contradiction.
Unlike the U.S., where UFO controversy most often takes place outside the media mainstream, the Mexico mass sightings are discussed openly on national television. Not everyone agrees the UFOs are extraterrestrial craft. But in Mexico, healthy debate on the true origin of these UFOs is encouraged. So, to rule out the possibility that these UFOs are conventional aircraft or an organized hoax, we had our videotape footage analyzed by David Froning, retired chief scientist at a major aerospace firm.
As far as the pictures of in-flight videos, this is about as good as I've seen. They demonstrate a field propulsion and technology that's far beyond anything that I'm aware of that we have today. Most scientists look at these things as not that these are phenomena that violate known physical laws. It's just that they're phenomena that our known laws cannot explain right now.
If these craft do defy the laws of physics as we know them, could they be alien spacecraft? Do they portend a visitation from an enlightened civilization, as some believe? The sightings continue to this day, and there is a growing grassroots movement working in Mexico to find out what or who is patrolling their skies.
UFO experts who conduct serious research have a whole vocabulary to describe their formative science. One term you may not be familiar with is flap. A flap occurs when UFOs appear in waves over a specific area, as in Mexico City. The appearance of a flap has sinister overtones for ufologists.
All around the globe, there are certain places that seem to act as natural UFO magnets. These areas are attracting flaps, or waves of UFOs, that may last for years. There are hotspots in Russia, Europe, and in South America, the heavily populated city of Sao Paulo has had hundreds of sightings by thousands of people. These flaps have prompted researchers to try to find a common pattern or motive.
Anybody who studies this soon becomes almost desperate to understand a pattern or to impose some purpose on the phenomenon.
In the United States, sightings are widespread and occur almost nightly. America's #1 hotspot is Gulf Breeze, Florida. Ralph Fuller's sighting in 1988 was among thousands of others, but Ralph was the first to capture a UFO on tape.
I don't know what that is out there over the Gulf, but we just had a real bright light. I think it might be a flying saucer.
They seem to spawn one another. The two went to 3 and 4, and ultimately, over a matter of maybe a couple of minutes' time, there were 10 of these lights out over the Gulf, and they seemed to be in some semblance of a formation, but still in all, there was no movement whatsoever, no noise, no sound, nothing of that sort. You see nothing but the Gulf of Mexico. The nearest point of land would be the Yucatan Peninsula, and there were no boats or anything of that type in the area either.
These are sky watchers, amateur UFO enthusiasts in the Breeze area who go out almost every night of the week with cameras and binoculars in search of UFOs.
What makes a good sky watching area, for one, is a good field of view. That is, being able to have an unobstructed view of the skyline and Ideally, you'd like to be away from city lights, but that's not always possible. So we go out in the evening and take our chances, and you may have a relaxing evening out under the stars, and then you may be blessed with a sighting. We just never know. We've seen amber-colored lights, 8 lights in a perfect circle gliding and performing maneuvers in the sky. We've seen rows of lights suggesting lights perhaps around the periphery of a craft.
There are UFO hotspots all over the country. Gulf Breeze, certainly, but also here in New York State near a little town called Pine Bush. And the hotspots here near Pine Bush, according to one scientist, have a very special meaning.
Bruce Cornett is a geologist who lives near Pine Bush, New York. After numerous significant sightings of UFOs near his home, he began studying the area with an electromagnetometer.
What I found is that these magnetic anomalies are in specific patterns. And all of the UFO activity, the landings, the sightings where they are taking off and landing, when we've been able to identify specific areas, are associated with these magnetic anomalies.
Are you suggesting that nature created homing devices deep in the ground?
No, I think that it's a reverse. If we are dealing with an alien culture and they are doing something underground, they're using the natural magnetic anomalies to disguise their own magnetic signals.
Are you saying there are, or could be, aliens in the Earth?
I'm not saying it's certain. It is definitely possible, based on what I've seen.
Do you realize how that sounds?
I don't like the idea just simply because it is so outrageous. Then I would have to also add some of the photographic data that I have that shows, at least in one particular case, a UFO going up at a 7-degree dive right down into the ground, what appears to be.
One of the most well-documented sightings in history occurred in Pine Bush on August 6, 1992.
We think in excess of 1,000 people may have seen 2, 3 ships or 4 ships where I took video, and all the police departments across the whole lower New York State area was simply inundated with just hundreds and hundreds of calls.
We looked over the top of the trees, and there was this object there out of nowhere, this great big object. It was about 300 foot wide, the size of a football field hanging over your head, and about 300 foot off the ground.
We looked at our clocks, and we had 3 battery-running clocks, 2 in the kitchen and 1 in the living room. And for some strange reason, all 3 clocks were stopped at the same time.
Just about everyone in Pine Bush has seen a UFO. In his barbershop, Butch Hunt hears a lot of stories from eyewitnesses about strange alien encounters.
Well, about 60% of the people around here, I think, have seen something. And some talk about it and some don't. They're just afraid to talk about it, afraid of ridicule and intimidation. The one that we saw was over Red Mills Bridge, and there were 6 of us in the car, but it just so nice. It just glided right over the trees, and we just got out and stood there, just gawked at it, and nobody said a word. But the whole episode was probably 30 seconds. But it was huge. It was bigger than the bridge.
UFOs are cited by all kinds of people, including the most credible professionals that you can find. In addition, when we have multiple witnesses who all tell the same story, then we can say, well, that's probably a pretty good report. If we have enough detail in a given report that we can rule out all of the normal explanations, it's not the planet Venus, it's not the Aurora Borealis or a meteor, it's not an aircraft that we can name, then we are talking something fairly credible.
If these mysterious craft are being piloted by an alien civilization, what is their mission? Why Earth? And why now? There are growing numbers of people, now in the thousands, who believe that they've been abducted, manipulated, and then released by aliens. It sounds ridiculous until you hear their stories.
I looked up in my rearview mirror, and lights were coming down out of the sky.
I walked out to the edge of the water, and I noticed this huge, shining
thing.
I was so terrified looking into these big black eyes and these little creatures. I was thinking I could just raise my fist and crush his head. And exactly at that moment, I became paralyzed.
The visions often come during sleep. Nightmares about being abducted, probed, and prodded by aliens who have sinister motives. Hundreds of people have come forward to talk about their disturbing experiences and admit that they think their nightmares are real. Experts believe that there are thousands, perhaps even millions more just like them, who are too afraid to talk.
We have hundreds and thousands of people who are coming forward and saying that the abduction phenomenon has happened to them, that they've experienced it, and basically they say the same thing as everybody else has said, and until recently, there was no possibility that they could have picked up these stories in the media.
Since she was a baby, commercial photographer Kim Carlsberg has been plagued by memories of abduction.
At 4:30 in the morning, I saw this image of these four beings just move through this wall. They just, like it wasn't there. And they came over to me, two at my feet, two at my head, and they started to lift me up to the ceiling.
Bud Hopkins has been receiving alien abduction reports for 26 years and is a firm believer.
I'm the first to admit that all this sounds outrageous. It all sounds just crazy, and yet the evidence is there behind it.
These particular problems could adequately be explained by the condition narcolepsy. This is a disorder characterized by hypnagogic hallucinations, and hallucinations that occur at sleep onset, which can be very vivid and include the feeling of other people being present in the room, or a sensation of levitation. Patients will actually describe saying that they are looking down onto their body.
I have two people that I've never met describing this exact same examination of their head being opened up, something being done to their brain, and being put back together again.
They opened my back. I knew my back was open because I could feel. It was almost as though a slit had been drawn down my back and across to the side, and they had opened a flap of flesh and tissue.
Whether the reports come from adults or children, men or women, most of them follow similar patterns.
There's a bright light that shines in the room. The abductee sees it. They hear a noise outside.
They're not interested in your mate, they're interested in you. So what they do is they render the person that you're with unconscious.
She goes up a beam of light with the alien into a hovering craft. If anyone goes into the room at that point, there's no one in the room. She's not in bed. In other words, the person is literally missing.
You find yourself on a table and these creatures around you with instruments, and you have no idea what they're doing, and they don't tell you.
The focus of the entire enterprise seems to me to be unmistakably on reproductive issues.
90% of reported abductions involve descriptions of what experts call gray aliens, extraterrestrial creatures with oversized heads and dark almond-shaped protruding eyes. Less common are insect-like or reptilian creatures.
The reptilian type has bothered a lot of people. It seems to be quite hostile and intrusive, often has claw-like hands, and I know there's one case where claw marks were photographed on the back of a woman.
There's one being in particular that I always recognize, and he's not a gray. He's taller, he's thinner, he's got a bigger head, he's got bigger eyes. His limbs are very praying mantis-like. I remember being on the table with my head turned away, not wanting to look at this creature. And then when I looked at him, I just recognized him as the one that I hated.
In a few cases, subjects claim to see hybrids, creatures who are half human, half alien. Some abductees believe they are being crossbred with aliens to create these hybrids.
A very important part of the abduction phenomenon is that there are reproductive procedures carried out upon them.
I've been shown children, I've been shown babies. I've been asked to hold children and babies. I've been asked to give these children affection. And these children aren't alien children, and they're not human children. They're somewhere in between.
I had a woman who had been to the doctor, had an ultrasound done. Her husband was there. Everyone observed at 3 months a healthy fetus. The next day she wakes up screaming. They took it. Is so upset, her husband takes her back to the doctor. He does a pregnancy test, finds out she's no longer pregnant. They do a D&C, there's nothing there.
The most humiliating thing that happened to me is they put a cylindrical sort of thing over my genitals, and it made me have an orgasm in a second. And I really feel like I'm one of those few men who knows what a woman feels like when she's raped.
I've been on a table and I've seen something removed from my body that I will call a fetus, a baby. It was so small I couldn't believe that it could live on its own. I remember putting my finger in the arch of its foot. I was afraid to look at the face. I was afraid to see what it looked like.
There seems to be an enormous interest in the emotional side of this, too, on the part of the aliens. They want us to hold these odd little children, these babies. They want to see how a mother will hold in love a child, things which to us are instinctive.
The abduction phenomenon begins usually in infancy, or at least by the age of 2, 3, or 4. It continues all through childhood, all through maturity, and into old age as well.
I have many cases where the person is taken as a child, usually what we refer to as the bedroom visitation.
I was laying in bed, I opened my eyes, and here's a little gray standing there looking at me. And all I could really remember were those dark eyes.
That little person, as he or she grows to adulthood, will be abducted over a period of time at irregular intervals.
Let us assume that this is all being made up, that this is internally generated, that there is no abduction phenomenon. If that's the case, then we have discovered something of enormous importance.
What are the repercussions of thousands of people running around thinking they're crazy, feeling crazy, being crazy, because they have no way to understand what's happening?
Psychiatrists and psychologists who are dealing with these people are the first to say, something happened to this person. This is not a fantasy. This is not something the person cooked up. This was an event in that person's life which was truly upsetting.
These experiences are not pleasant experiences. This is not something I'm happy happened to me. There's a part of me that would love to find the answer that it was something else.
One of the most important and controversial UFO sightings in U.S. history occurred in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, in 1969. To this day, many researchers who've investigated this sighting believe it is a model for how our government maintains secrecy and disseminates disinformation about UFO sightings.
Kecksburg used to be just like a lot of other small villages in western Pennsylvania. But in 1965, Kecksburg lost its anonymity when it became one of the world's most famous UFO landings.
I happened to look up in the sky and I seen this red fireball.
It sure wasn't a meteor, because I've seen them fall before. And I never seen any of them with blue lights on.
And it looked like it made a turn and come back again. And when it come back, it seemed like it went down.
It was December 9th, 1965, a night that many townspeople will never forget.
I got my flashlight and I started down through the woods up to where it was at.
There was no wings, there was no tail section, there was no motors, there was no windows, there was no doors. It was big enough for a grown person to stand up in.
It had like Egyptian writing, like backwards writing on it.
Stars and circles and dashes and lines and things like that.
It looked like an acorn.
It was really weird.
Some claim the UFO wasn't the only thing to arrive that night.
It wasn't too much longer. Down through the woods come two gentlemen. The one gentleman, very ramrod straight, very authoritative voice, crew-cut hair. I mean, he just reeked of military. He looked at the object and looked at us. He says, all right, this is now a restricted area. Unions are all ordered out of here.
Some military people come to the house and just said they'd like to use the phone. They sort of took the house over.
We started talking among ourselves, what's going on. About that time, up here on the road, comes a big flatbed truck in.
The flatbed went down and empty, and it come back. He got out with something on the back of it, covered up, about the size of a Volkswagen.
That truck was hell-bent for leather, and if you'd have walked out on that road, you'd have still been there, because they'd have scraped you up with a putty knife. They weren't stopping for anything or anybody. And that began the real mystery of this whole thing.
27 years later, what happened down there in that woods surrounded by fields, if anything happened down there at all, is still a matter of bitter controversy.
You've got this town split into two groups. You got the believers and the non-believers.
There's been some friendship lost, and it's foolish as far as I'm concerned.
I have a brother-in-law that he hasn't spoke to me for 2 years, said that I lied about everything, but I never lied about a thing.
You got neighbors and neighbors that has known each other all their life. Now they don't want to talk because one believes it and one don't believe it.
Just as the town is divided, so too are experts who have researched what really happened in Kecksburg. Planetary expert Robert Young believes that some citizens may have perpetrated a hoax. He claims the UFO was merely a meteor known to have passed over Ontario and several northern states that evening.
Virtually all of the accounts can be explained by people having looked toward and seeing the Ontario meteor.
How about the accounts, though, of the military that turned out in large numbers, kept people away from going down there, a truck that went down into the area and came out? You got eyewitnesses that say, this happened.
Right, I understand it. I have written, signed eyewitness accounts from 61 local people who say that that there was nothing crashed here or was recovered. There was no military occupation.
A lot of people probably think you're the government.
Well, sure, yeah, but I'm not.
I don't know how some people can say that nothing ever happened when there were so many people that saw things that night. Something had to happen.
I know what I saw, and I'm not going to deny it. They can tell me I'm lying, but I know that I seen the military in my house that night.
Freedom of Information Act states there was 212 military personnel here that night.
Sightings attempted to speak with the Kecksburg residents who deny anything extraterrestrial ever happened here, but they all refused our invitation to talk. Even the landowner whose property was the alleged crash site remains silent.
I think the government bought them off, or threatened them with something that got them scared half to wits.
Ironically, their refusal to talk has only deepened the controversy. UFO researcher Stan Gordon heard about the Kecksburg incident on the radio the night it allegedly happened in 1965. He's been investigating the sighting ever since.
So much of what we know about the case now, we've learned since about 1987, with the fact that now we have at least 4 different eyewitnesses who apparently saw the object on the ground at Kecksburg. The fact that there are dozens of people independent of each other who don't even know each other yet, who have given us detailed information about what they experienced and saw that night. And they're giving us confirming information that has not been published yet.
The skeptics, and these include the people who own the land and some very substantial citizens of Kecksburg, think that this whole thing is loony. Why do they feel so strongly the other way?
Could be that some of these people were in the wrong place at that time. They were in a position where they didn't see what was going on. And if you see the geography of the area and where the majority of people were that night, they could not have seen the military activity that was happening on the land on the other side of the area down there.
Do you have any hard evidence at all that what went down in the woods near Kecksburg was something other than a meteor, or was anything at all?
Unfortunately not. As in so many of these cases, you have to go by the eyewitness accounts. And in this case, the eyewitness accounts are very, very strong. And again, unfortunately, we don't have that type of information. If this was the case, whether it be a space probe or in other UFO cases, sure, if we had the physical hardware, the mystery would be over.
What do you think it is?
What do I think it is? At this point, and again, this is not conclusive, at this point, the weight of evidence would point in the direction that this may have been a Soviet space probe.
If the object were proven to be a Soviet space probe, then many questions would be answered. If a Soviet device landed in Kecksburg, the government would have been required by international treaty to recover and return immediately any space debris to the country of origin. But retired Army Sergeant Clifford Stone doesn't believe the Soviet probe theory.
If this was of Soviet origin in 1965, the State Department would have released documentation to me under their Moondust files. To date, none of that information has been forth.
Clifford Stone collects government documents about space debris recovery operations, like Project Moondust and Project Blue Fly. He began his investigations in 1965 when, as an Army sergeant, he witnessed a top-secret delivery to Lockbourne Air Force Base, about 200 miles from Kecksburg.
I noticed that on the back of the vehicle, it had something that was covered by a tarp. It was about 10 to 12 foot at the base, 12 foot tall. It looked like a chocolate drop. When my friend told me that every question I ever had about UFOs was under that canvas, I was mystified.
Since that time, Stone has repeatedly attempted to obtain information from the government regarding that object. Each time, the government's response has been the same.
They have taken the stance, by direction of the President of the United States, we may neither confirm nor deny the existence or non-existence of any information that all involve the recovery of unknowns.
Kecksburg remains a town divided. The only thing on which believers and non-believers can agree is that all they want to know once and for all is what really happened on December 9th, 1965. What would you like to see happen next?
It's time now, after 27 years, that the public has the right to know the true facts, regardless of what the object was or what really occurred. Something came down. From numerous eyewitness accounts, there was a lot of military activity into the small village. Then an object was located, that it was recovered, it was transported away for study. What was the object, and why after 27 years haven't they revealed what really was found?
Until authenticated debris is collected and publicly displayed, the validity of the UFO phenomenon rests entirely with the credibility of its eyewitnesses. Ufologists know this and have spent many years collecting sightings reports from the most credible eyewitnesses of all, military pilots.
Unfortunately, these pilot reports remain unconfirmed because military personnel in this country refuse to talk on the record. But in Russia, one former Soviet pilot is talking. In 1991, a pilot in Russia came forward and told of a frightening UFO encounter. Risking ridicule, Maxim Cherbakov was determined to tell what he maintains is the true story of his bizarre experience. At 19, Cherbakov was one of the rising stars in the Soviet Military Flight Academy and became the Russian equivalent of a Top Gun. His flying record was impeccable until August 1991. Then, on 2 separate occasions, he had strange mechanical malfunctions in his jet aircraft. On one occasion, he was forced to eject. An investigation of that incident concluded that Cherbakov had acted calmly and rationally. But 12 days later, a third incident would change Cherbakov's life forever.
20th August, second shift. I made 2 flights with my commander, and third flight I made on my own. I gained an altitude of 3,900 meters. Then suddenly, I saw a ball in front of me, about 20 degrees to the right.
He watched the object for several seconds. Then, as it came toward him, Cherbakov tried to radio the base. The light from the UFO was blinding.
A sense of unexplainable fear came over me. On the back of my head, I began experiencing warmth. I felt as if someone was present and watching me. My movements were under control, controlled by someone other than me.
Cherbakov claims the reddish-yellow object started maneuvering around the aircraft. For several minutes, it kept up with the jet's airspeed and mimicked its movements. During that time, Cherbakov was unable to communicate with his base commander. The radio emitted only a squealing sound.
Pilot Cherbakov's description of the UFO moving relative to his own airplane is really quite common.
Dr. Richard Haynes has documented over 3,000 pilot sightings of UFOs.
I have thousands and thousands of cases of pilots in daylight encounters with structured objects, in the sense of having 3-dimensional mass, in the sense of having aerodynamic kinds of flight behavior relative to the aircraft. And so what he describes here fits in very nicely to what I have from hundreds of other pilots around the world.
Suddenly, in rapid-fire succession, the generator in Cherbakov's jet failed. The instruments indicated a fire on board, and the cockpit filled with smoke. The base commander ordered Cherbakov to eject.
I began arguing with the commander because the plane was still above the residential area. My altitude began to drop rapidly. I had to pull the plane out of a nose dive. At the altitude of 1,000 meters, I finally cleared the residential area and I ejected. 4 seconds later, the plane exploded.
Cherbakov landed safely in a field and was rescued an hour later by a military helicopter. While officials combed the wreckage of the jet, Cherbakov was examined at a military hospital. An intensive 3-day interrogation followed.
The interrogation was conducted with a sense of total distrust toward me. Right from the start, they told me that the first, the second, and now the third incident is all your own doing.
Cherbakov was also interrogated by the KGB, who did not believe his story and charged him with insubordination and sabotage under the International Terrorism Act. Cherbakov claims the KGB threatened that if he did not tell the truth, he would be brought to trial, found guilty of terrorism, and shot by a firing squad.
Vladimir Azhaja heads the Russian Center for the Study of UFOs, housed in the Ministry of the Interior in Moscow. Dr. Azhaja is considered one of the world's foremost experts on UFO phenomena and has studied Cherbakov's case.
We concluded that Maxim has a normal, healthy psyche and is not inclined to fantasies.
Retired Major General Albert Stubblebine is a former commanding general of U.S. Army intelligence. He witnessed and documented a hypnosis session conducted with Cherbakov by an American psychiatrist.
As taking him into the trance, he changed from this terrorized, fear-ridden kid into a pilot, sitting in the cockpit, sitting in the seat, sitting with the controls, relating what was going on. There was a change in the individual.
Anybody can fabricate. The question is, was he fabricating? And he struck me as a person who, in that situation, was not fabricating. Whatever it was that he was saying, he truly believed had happened to him. Maxime really believed he had not done anything wrong, in fact, had done the right thing, and desperately wanted this sorted out.
Although affidavits to that effect were presented at his court-martial hearing, the court still blamed Cherbakov for the destruction of his aircraft. But the military prosecutor admits that some of the evidence of Cherbakov's innocence was very convincing.
From the beginning, I had doubts about the truthfulness of Cherbakov's statement. But after questioning his mother, his comrades, and his superiors, I became convinced that Cherbakov had an encounter with a UFO.
In January 1992, the case against Maxim Cherbakov was dropped. But despite this vindication, he was not welcomed back into the military.
There is no training for pilots to deal with such encounters. The older pilots told me that a lot of encounters happen, but they don't speak about them. I feel that I'm missing something from my soul that I want very much. My love for the planes and flying has remained and will continue to remain.
Did Maxim Cherbakov see a UFO? We may never know the answer, but one thing is clear. Maxim Cherbakov ejected only after he saw that his jet would avoid populated areas below. Many in Russia suggested that Cherbakov should be awarded a medal for heroism. The United States Air Force admits that between 1952 and 1969, they conducted a study, codenamed Project Blue Book. Its purpose was to determine if UFOs posed a real threat to the American people. Project Blue Book concluded they did not, and since 1969, the Pentagon has denied participating in any other UFO study. But ufologists believe this is a lie. They point to evidence of a monumental conspiracy designed to hide what the government knows and when it knew it.
Our government has flat out lied to us for 40 years or more. They've threatened people and intimidated people. They've spied on UFO groups, infiltrated UFO groups, spied on researchers, compiled dossiers. Their response is bordered on paranoia.
In 1988, reporter George Knapp of Las Vegas CBS television station KLAS began investigating the U.S. government's involvement with UFOs. He says he's found evidence proving a massive cover-up that began in 1947 and continues to this day.
The CIA says that it does not collect information on UFOs, and it hasn't since the 50s. There are reams of documents squeezed out of the CIA that indicate that they have on staff CIA UFO experts, agency personnel monitoring the situation on an ongoing basis. The FBI denied having any documents on UFOs in the 1970s, the early 1970s. 3 years later, they released 1,700 pages of information on UFOs, documents that they had. They lie.
But for UFO researchers, there is one persistent problem with those hundreds of released pages. Most, like this 1958 UFO memo to President Eisenhower, have been highly censored, essentially making them unreadable. Even this National Security Agency document explaining why UFO data should remain secret is itself almost entirely blacked out. Ironically, the official position of the U.S. government is that UFOs are not a threat to national security. Yet the agencies involved
claimed the censored information is vital to national security. From 1947 to 1969, the Air Force conducted Project Blue Book. Staffed with just 3 people, it studied 12,000 UFO sightings. All but 701 were explained to the military's satisfaction. And the group that remained unexplained?
It does not contain any pattern of purpose or of consistency that we can relate with to any conceivable threat to the United States.
The Air Force closed Blue Book in 1969, but project critics weren't satisfied.
The first person to head it up, Captain Edward J. Rappelt, quit in disgust, wrote his own book, and declared that there was something to UFOs, and the Project Blue Book was nothing more than a whitewash.
Other government officials, including a senator and 2 former presidents, have tried unsuccessfully to shed some light on the UFO phenomenon. Arizona Senator Barry Goldwater, President Gerald Ford, and President Jimmy Carter, who actually saw a UFO himself and filed a formal report, have all sought to have top-secret UFO information released to the public. All requests for that information were denied. Cover-up allegations aren't limited to the United States government either. Author Timothy Good claims that governments around the world are keeping UFO information top secret. And in his book, Above Top Secret, he claims only an elite few have access to that information.
Because so little of the research is made known to top ministers.
One country is bucking that trend. Belgium has acknowledged tracking unidentified, seemingly intelligently controlled craft in its airspace. Radar tapes released by the Air Force show an object jumping from 200 meters to 2,000 meters in 1 second, a distance of just over a mile. The Belgian Air Force has even put aside a plane to search for the objects. But the attitude of the United States remains very different. UFO experts claim our government is conducting top-secret research into UFOs in the Nevada desert. South of a dry lake bed known as Area 51 is a place known as S4, allegedly home to a super-secret government research facility. In the course of our investigation, we found a scientist who says he used to work there. Robert Lazar was shocked when he first discovered what it was he would be working on.
I got out of the bus. I was told to walk directly through the hangar, and immediately, even before entering the hangar, you can see the edge of a disc. This is your classic flying saucer, 2 inverted pie plates, if you wish, with a segmented, larger area dome on top. Within minutes of that, I finally realized that this had nothing to do with something the government was producing. And that was quite shocking because everything inside was small. This is a full-size craft, 30, 35 feet in diameter, maybe 40. But you're looking at seats that are, 18 inches off the ground, obviously made, for something smaller. And certainly wasn't made for children to play in.
Lazar says there were 9 spaceships in all, and he claims to have seen one fly.
It began to lift off the ground almost silently. There was a hiss sound, like a corona discharge if you hear around high voltage systems, accompanied by a faint, it probably would have been brighter at night, a faint blue glow around the bottom. As the craft approached about 30 feet, 20 feet, something like that off the ground, that corona discharge disappeared. The sound stopped and the craft stood there silently and slowly drifted over to the left and then to the right.
The government denies they're testing alien craft at S4. Lazar no longer works there and nowadays spends his time working on one of his hobbies, jet car racing. He alleges that after he went public, security officers at the base threatened his life. He also says that his employment and military service records have disappeared. Despite repeated requests, the government can't find them. The subcontractor who hired him for the job at S4 refuses to comment. But a few clues support Lazar's contention that he is a scientist and that he has worked for the government. This W-2 form indicates that he had been employed by the Department of Naval Intelligence. Before his stint at S4, Lazar claims to have worked at the Los Alamos National Laboratory. Los Alamos officials can't find any record of him, but his name does appear in a laboratory phone book from that time. Reporter George Knapp was able to track down a few of Lazar's colleagues who could confirm parts of his story. But when they talked to Knapp, something strange happened.
one after another had visits from government personnel who basically intimidated or told them to back off, followed them around. There didn't have to be any direct communication where an agent says, you keep talking to this guy, you're going to end up in a river. The message was very clear.
Since Lazar's story broke, Area 51 has become a hotbed for UFO sightings.
You see that? It just zipped to the left. See it again?
While our cameras were there, a bright light appeared in the night sky. Utterly silent, it seemed to float below the mountaintops. Analysis of our videotape proved inconclusive. Those who might know the answers aren't talking.
I've been covering organized crime in Las Vegas for 10 years, dealing with mob hitmen and mob informants, people who have been in the witness protection program. The fear that is generated by this UFO subject for people who really know about it far outweighs the kind of fear that the mob inspires. I mean, people are more afraid of our government than they are of organized crime.
I am exactly sure of what I saw. I know what mainstream science is like. I know where physics stands. I know all of that. And this is an extraterrestrial craft. This technology is hundreds and hundreds of years in advance of us, and that's the end of that story.
The people we've heard from in this report believe that they have had close encounters of the first, second, third, even fourth kind. Skeptics charge that they're mistaken, that they're misinformed, or at the very worst, just plain crazy. But are we, the human race, so conceited as to believe that we are alone in the universe? Is it possible that in the infinite frontier of space, this speck of intelligent life we call Earth is the only one? For Sightings, I'm Tim White. Welcome to Sightings. I'm Tim White. Recently, we brought you the story of a Midwestern family that's been plagued by bizarre haunting activity. Well, from our initial investigation, the videotape that our Sightings crew brought back was unlike anything we'd ever seen before. We brought in renowned ghost investigator Al Rober to join our team, and along with the crew, Al and I went to meet the family.
Hi, how are you?
The family wishes to remain anonymous. We're using pseudonyms here and concealing the father's identity.
How are the scratches that you had that we saw before, are they healing?
Well, this is set here scarred. The ones on my stomach are healing up pretty good.
Just 2 weeks before, these bleeding welts materialized on camera during our first Sightings investigation. The tape of that event was analyzed by Carrie Gaynor, world-renowned parapsychologist who was lead investigator on both the entity and poltergeist cases. He asked to view the images of this bizarre event side by side. On the right, a frame of video with a long bleeding welt. On the left, an image taken 8 minutes earlier when our camera first began to roll. There's no welt visible.
The exciting thing for me as a researcher is that the camera didn't pull away. It was there the whole time, and that severely reduces the possibility of any kind of hoax. Most of the cases we come across are playful, mischievous, bizarre, weird, and a lot of them have just normal, natural explanations. This case that involves scratch marks, this seems a little more frightening and something that we should be a little more cautious about in terms of studying the phenomena.
The phenomena in this house, according to the family who lives here, are caused by Sally, the spirit of a 7-year-old child. They believe it's Sally who causes paranormal activity, like lights flickering on and off mysteriously, as seen in this home video.
Sally. Yeah, on the left side.
Family photos have turned up with unusual blurring and discoloration, confounding our photo experts. During our initial investigation, paranormal researcher Howard Heim felt and recorded strange sensations of cold and electromagnetism.
Actually feel like a small circumference about 4 inches in diameter coming straight down.
Sightings camera operator Phil Lapkin was startled when an intense charge of static electricity began swirling around him. Our audio equipment was able to record a snapping sound along the floor and around his legs. On our return to the house, we asked ghost investigator Al Rober to gather additional hard data at the site. His equipment can monitor electromagnetic energy and minute temperature fluctuations. He photographed and examined items that were supposedly touched and, in some cases, burned by the entity.
There's a chemical that's built on this.
Tim?
Yeah.
I would assume from that, Greg, that you are feeling, well, something. Air conditioner's off.
I feel it blowing right through here.
Do you? Well, a little bit. I'm going to move over here and see if I can feel the same thing, though. Now we're in front of a window and an air conditioner that's off.
Right.
All right, I definitely can feel a sense of some air moving there. Yeah. Let's sit back down and talk, especially
As we continued videotaping, I was not the only member of the Sightings crew who seemed to feel a strange sensation of cold air circulating in small, isolated patches. It happened again and again.
Oh, man. That's weird. It's right, yeah, right here. Ooh,
and
boy.
the hair on your arms is standing up.
Right here.
I can see the hair over in this area here.
Ooh,
just
right here.
Down behind you, too.
In and of itself, the sensation of cold and static electricity was intriguing, but not proof of the existence of Sally. However, the sensations, some were feeling more strongly than others, were usually followed by physical harm to Jeff.
More.
Oh, well, now that's very interesting.
It'd be okay if I sit down.
Why don't you sit down? I can tell that you're losing your breath right now.
Sally, what did I tell you?
Sally, we see you. We know you're here.
Whoever or whatever was responsible for these painful scratches struck repeatedly throughout the day. At one point, new welts began to form on Jeff's stomach. Then, I was shocked to see mysterious welts forming on his forehead.
This whole spirit thing scares me, and it just, some of the things she's done, she's lit fires, and I think, well, if she wants to hurt me, why couldn't she just light me on fire, or whatever she does to some of the other things around here? But yeah, this is as far as she goes.
Al, are you saying that virtually everything that you've seen here today could be explained through psychokinesis or some sort of projection?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Understanding his feelings here and his intense fear, he's very frightened and uncomfortable being thrust into this environment. That's not to say that there isn't a little girl ghost walking around. Because in cases when you do have a poltergeist, they seem to draw off the same energies.
What would your advice be to the couple living here?
One of the things I would tell them would be to try to document some more of this. Another thing that I would do, I would certainly recommend them to get rid of the toys in the corner and get rid of any encouragement that is now going on for this little girl ghost.
Whether the source of this bizarre activity lies within Jeff or in an outside entity who craves attention, the result is still unexplainable. What type of energy could create the frightening, diverse phenomena occurring here? Being on site, observing the ghostly activity as it happens, has been a disturbing experience. It's clear that this case merits continued investigation.
And whatever comes of it, we will try and pursue it as openly and honestly as we can here on Sightings, and we will share it with you. We'll be back with more Sightings in a moment.
Next,
two women share a terrifying memory of abduction by extraterrestrials.
First memory I had was screaming because I had alien eyes right in front of my face.
This advanced technology helps to diagnose arthritis. But to effectively relieve the minor pain of arthritis, use this, Advil. Advil contains the #1 doctor-prescribed pain reliever in its class, in non-prescription strength. Advil works directly at the site of arthritis pain, and nothing's been proven to last longer. And Advil is gentler on your stomach than aspirin. Advil, advanced medicine for pain.
Shake it, no dandruff. You've got Selsun Power. Brush it, no flakes. You've got Selsun Power with Selsun Blue. Doctors recommend it #1 over all leading brands. Dandruff problem? No way. You've got Selsun Power.
It's a double fresh taste to you. It's a double fresh breath. Do you know who? Well, it freshens your mouth and it freshens your breath. Double, double, double mint gum.
Clean, fresh taste for you. Clean, fresh breath for you-know-who. That's the double freshness you get with Double Mint Gum.
Well, it freshens your mouth and it freshens your breath. Double, double, double mint gum.
Hey, mister, your hardware's looking real good. These power belts are cool. Copper cables and silverware. Ooh, I'm strapping on these tools, 'cause you'll be the first place I'll always try, 'cause hardware now has a softer side. Come see the softer side of Sears.
The power of Alka-Seltzer Plus cold medicine is taking shape in new Alka-Seltzer Plus liquid gels, rushing concentrated medicines to relieve your worst cold. Rush relief with new Alka-Seltzer Plus liquid gels.
You meet a stranger, and something about them is familiar. You know each other from somewhere, you just can't figure out where. When that happened to two women in Virginia, they racked their brains for more than a year and finally came up with an unsettling answer. They believe that, as children, they shared an alien abduction experience. At first, they were fragments of memory. As a child, Claire Holcomb had pastoral visions. Sometimes they were strange. Sometimes they were disturbing. And later on, they became terrifying. She never knew what it meant until she was an adult. In 1987, Claire was looking for a career change. She responded to an ad for full-time help on a horse farm. Her interview with ranch owner Diana Graves was a turning point.
It was sort of, I know this person. And she was very comfortable around the horses. And it was sort of an instant recognition. And I hired her that day.
I felt when I first met Diana that I must have met her somewhere before or seen her somewhere before. I felt that I knew her quite well, but I couldn't explain that.
Claire worked at the ranch for 4 years before she and Diana figured out their connection. It started on a dark country road.
On my way home, fairly early in the evening, it was a warm night for December, I saw lights in the sky I thought were low-flying aircraft. But I wasn't hearing any sounds, engine noises, and was concerned that perhaps the engines had shut down. I pulled over to the side of the road and was blinded by these lights. But I was frozen to the spot. I didn't know what was happening.
Right after her sighting, Claire raced home, feeling sick, scared, and disoriented.
I think both of us thought she was going crazy. Too much stress that, you know, maybe she'd had a blackout. We couldn't explain the missing time. We didn't know what it was at the time.
The first thing that I noticed from that first experience was that my contact lenses appeared to be missing from my eyes. And I certainly had them in when I was driving.
Diana encouraged Claire to try and put the bizarre events behind her. But days later, Claire had another bizarre encounter.
She was reporting to me that she seemed to have seen some strange things. She had memories of this weird hand that she drew. And for some reason, I knew we needed help. I knew I could no longer handle it.
They got that help through the Fund for UFO Research. an organization that investigates extraterrestrial events and tries to separate fact from fantasy. They felt Claire was exhibiting signs of a classic abduction.
And many of the things she said, while not completely unique, were disturbing things that I had read about before, and I had no reason to think that she was making the thing up or that it was being fabricated in any way.
It was startling to us that anybody could possibly have experienced these things, and we've never heard about it.
The abduction syndrome is essentially this pattern that you do get from collecting data from a large number of people, and it has all of these common features, the fundamental one being missing time. Then there are others, the markings, the very strange medical problems that they often develop.
Along with Claire's health problems, Diana noticed that her employee was also seeing some health benefits. Claire's eyesight dramatically improved after her first abduction. Strangely, Diana's health started following the same course.
My eyes had improved dramatically, and I could think of no other rational explanation why my eyesight was also improving, unless I too was being abducted.
Diana wanted to know more and chose hypnotherapy as a way to retrieve her abduction memories. Her first session was traumatic.
And sure enough, the first memory I had was screaming because I had alien eyes right in front of my face, and I couldn't get away from them.
Robert. What are they doing to you? What are they doing to you?
Doing something to my head.
You're okay.
The way the events occur, I'm very convinced that she has experienced something, and what seems to be happening seems to be really, truly happening to her. She has the marks on her body.
Under hypnosis, Claire was also recalling vivid memories of torture, experimentation, and forced reproduction.
We'd had some severe ice storms. It'd been bitter cold. As is often the case, I was abducted from my bedroom. I had a nightgown on with no shoes. Naturally, I didn't sleep in my shoes. And when I was brought back, they made a mistake, which they sometimes do. And instead of putting me back in the house, they left me outside. When I thought I was going to die, the aliens came back, picked me up, and put me back in the house, in my bedroom. But the next morning, all the skin on the bottom of my feet had been burned off from sticking to the ice.
My conscious memory abductions are very fragmentary. I'll have a little bit of a memory of actually seeing a gray standing beside my bed at night, or being poked in the back. I'll have a memory of seeing either a blue or an orange light fill my room.
The women could not escape the relentless fear that accompanied their abduction experiences. They sought help from world-renowned abduction expert Bud Hopkins.
They were extremely impressive, articulate, obviously filled with a lot of emotion about their experiences. There was a lot of anger, a lot of fear, and I was just extremely impressed with them.
While discussing and comparing their separate abduction memories, Claire and Diana made a dramatic discovery.
We were both in a large room, and scenes were being projected, very disturbing scenes of devastation. We were told to watch it and to learn from it and to understand that these things were happening. We were, in fact, holding each other's hand.
Well, the issue of shared abductions is something we should sort out here. Many, many, many people are abducted with other abductees.
The women probed deeper into their past. Claire recalled a childhood abduction memory that she had shared with a little girl visiting from England.
When I was about 12 years old and had been on a picnic with some friends from school, I moved off by myself to sit on a bench. For some reason, I saw a little girl coming toward me and I didn't at the time recognize, and she was wearing a blue uniform. She had some kind of an accent that I thought might be British. Without stopping to think or discuss why we were doing this, we both meandered away from the picnic area into the woods, and were subsequently abducted from that clearing together.
The girl she was describing sounded like me when I was about the same age. And when Claire described to me what this other little English girl was wearing, I then went to the closet and pulled out a jacket that exactly matched her description.
She described to me how she used to dress going to school in England at that time, and I didn't know she'd attended school in England when she was 9 years old.
I was that other child.
We found a pattern that they had been abducted since childhood, separately, brought together, and made to interact as if the aliens were interested in human relationships and human friendships.
I'm completely convinced that they have planned Claire and my meeting since they started, since we were such small children.
I think it's amazing that we met again in this life, in this world. Although I can't explain it.
Her coming to this farm 5 years ago was a coincidence. They arranged it, they planned it. I don't know why they planned it. I'm glad we met, but they planned it.
The issue of alien abduction has come under fire lately from mental health professionals who believe abductees are being manipulated through directed therapy and hypnosis. But the number of people who claim an abduction experience is growing, and they're not all going to the same therapists. National statistics indicate that as many as 2 million Americans may have had experiences consistent with an alien abduction.
Coming up next, documenting a rare encounter with UFOs. And later, angels rescue children from the clutches of a madman.
He's part of the coolest crew on TV, and he's coming to the Gardens to meet you. On Sunday, September 25th, you can hang with Mario Lopez, later from Saved by the Bell. Starting at 2, Mario will be signing autographs, along with Krista from the Star 64 Kids Club. Then Mario will drop the first puck when the Cincinnati Cyclones take on Indianapolis, followed by the Florida Panthers versus the New York Islanders. So come meet Slater from Saved by the Bell on Sunday, September 25th at the Cincinnati Gardens. Tickets are available at the Gardens box office and all Ticketmaster locations. Brought to you by the Cyclones and Star 64.
Shopping for new furniture? Need some great decorating ideas? Do we have a show for you? Decorating hints, quality furniture, and much more. It's all on the Value City Furniture Decorators Showcase.
Thanks for taking me to the doctor's today, Jen.
Sure, Dad. When did he say you could go back to work?
Well, that's the problem. I'm afraid I won't be going back to work.
Would you rather be working in Kent because of a physical or mental disability? Call Arnold Levine, attorneys at law. Arnold Levine works hard for you to help you get the Social Security compensation you deserve. At Arnold Levine, we can't turn back the hands of time, but we can help secure your future.
The law offices of Arnold Levine, helping you get the compensation you deserve. Call 241-6748.
Hey, how would you like to sneak a peek at these 94 Chevrolets? They look just like the 95s, only the price is a whole lot cheaper. And when the 94s are gone, they're gone. Take a peek at this Geo Prism, only $12,360. Or take your pick of these extended Astro vans or full-size conversion vans, only $19,990. Hurry. These Chevys won't last long. Jeff Wyler Chevrolet's Sneak a Peek sale. It's what you've been waiting for. Jeff Wyler Chevrolet, located in the Jeff Wyler Eastgate Auto Mall, 1 mile east of I-275 on Route 32, always cheaper in the country.
As soon as you walk in, you realize Once Upon a Child is different. Every item is like new, really nice clothes, current styles, and the prices are incredible. Am I saving money? You better believe it.
Now get any medium pizza, a single order of regular breadsticks, and Pepsi delivered for just $10.99. A great deal on a great meal from Pizza Hut.
The most recent Roper poll suggests that a staggering 96% of all Americans have heard or read about the existence of UFOs. And as our awareness grows, so do reported sightings. Many viewers have written to ask what they should do in the event of a UFO sighting. For the answer, we went right to the experts.
The number of UFO sightings has grown dramatically in the past 50 years, and so has the number of people actively searching the skies. Every night, thousands of people turn their attention to the heavens, hoping for a glimpse of what might be a UFO. Unfortunately, most of these sightings are just wishful thinking.
We can explain and have explained, not explaining away, but explain a good 70, 75%, maybe even 80%.
Bill Pitts heads a consortium of former military personnel who evaluate UFO sightings. The group, the new Project Blue Book, takes its name from the famed government UFO study, but there the similarity ends.
The purpose of Project Blue Book is to reevaluate the classic cases, which we've been doing, and also to even look at new cases as they come along that really come to our attention and we get excited over, and we have had several of those.
Would you know what to do if you saw a UFO? The new Project Blue Book offers these guidelines for documenting your sighting.
Watch closely the object you're observing and try to remember as much as you can about that object. Check to see if there are any noises that seem to be emanating from the particular object. Write it down as soon as you can, and remembering what it looked like to you initially, any changes made during the observation. See also if it seems to be going along at a straight trajectory, if it's zigzagging or any type of a motion up or down, sideways or otherwise. Try to pinpoint the time as closely as possible while you're observing the object or light source. If you have a camera or camcorder available, take as many shots as possible and footage as possible of the object. Being careful with a camcorder or camera, if it's a motion picture camera especially, don't pan the object so fast that you're losing the object. You should notify your local police department or your sheriff's department, and if they don't have any record of somebody else making a sighting report to them, then check with your FAA control tower operators for someone else to turn it into, or send it to us at Project Blue Book.
Why is the new Project Blue Book so interested in evaluating new sightings?
I think it would be a wonderful thing to find something extraterrestrial visiting our shores and meeting with us. I don't know what will happen in our lifetime, if ever, for that matter. Maybe we have to go there to meet them on their grounds.
And here's one more tip from the new Project Blue Book. If you sight what you believe to be a UFO and you have a video camera at the ready, remember that most camcorders have a built-in microphone. So while you're videotaping, record a running description of events as you see them. After the event, interview any other witnesses and, if possible, get their full names and addresses.
When Sightings continues, schoolmates are rescued from the brink of death by otherworldly forces.
She had been sent to help me. She was my guardian angel.
Then, a bizarre mystery continues, and later, new evidence that mythological creatures are real.
The power of Alka-Seltzer Plus cold medicine is taking shape in new Alka-Seltzer Plus liquid gels, rushing concentrated medicines to relieve your worst cold. Rush relief with new Alka-Seltzer Plus liquid gels.
In the past, to gain weight, you had to eat food loaded with fat and cholesterol. Now there's GNC's Pro Performance 1850 Weight Gainer, scientifically designed with 1,850 fat-free calories per serving. Pro Performance 1850, only at General Nutrition Centers.
Hey, mister, your hardware's looking real good. These power belts are cool. Copper cables and silverware. Ooh, I'm strapping on these tools, 'cause you'll be the first place I'll always try, 'cause hardware now has a softer side. Come see the softer side of Sears.
I am so tired of small portions in restaurants. I know. Women are supposed to like small portions. We're supposed to like shining floors, too. Yeah, right. At least Burger King gets it. Look at the new cheeseburger. 75% more beef than McDonald's. Now you're talking. You add fries and a drink, charge $1.89, and you've got a meal at a price that would satisfy the appetite of any red-blooded American woman. Okay, guys, too.
Burger King. Get your burger's worth.
Excuse me.
Yes?
Would your customers be interested in salon quality products at a fraction of the price?
I don't think so.
Introducing Salon Style. Not available at salons anywhere.
The power of Alka-Seltzer Plus cold medicine is taking shape in new Alka-Seltzer Plus liquid gels, rushing concentrated medicines to relieve your worst cold. Rush relief with new Alka-Seltzer Plus liquid gels.
It was a parent's worst nightmare. In 1987, a madman in Cokeville, Wyoming, took children hostage, then detonated a bomb in an elementary school classroom. Miraculously, none of the children died. Since then, books and movies have recounted the amazing story of the Cokeville bomb and speculated about why the children were spared. But now, for the first time, the children themselves speak out about how they believe they were saved. Their stories have a common thread: the presence of angels. Cokeville, Wyoming, population 493. They say it's like no place on earth, and that was never more true than on the day local children believe angels came to school. It started here around 11 a.m. when David and Doris Young, armed with guns and a bomb, took the entire school hostage.
I said to them, "Is there something I could do to help you, sir?" And he said, "Yes, ma'am, there certainly is. This is a revolution. Your school's being taken hostage. Consider yourself a hostage." If you'd looked in David Young's eyes, you knew it was no joke. I've never, ever looked in anyone's eyes that were so cold and so emotionless. I mean, there was like this big void. There was nothing there.
David Young was a walking arsenal. In addition to automatic rifles, his body was wired to a bomb that could be detonated with a wave of his hand.
He said the bomb was capable of blowing up the entire building. He said it will level this whole building and everyone in it. The hardest part of the whole thing was that I started out in this thing alone, and I couldn't warn anyone.
With a gun to her back, Mrs. Cook was forced to lead David and Doris Young to the school's first-grade classroom. David Young made this his command center and forced all 153 teachers and students of the Cokeville Elementary School into the small room. He then demanded a $2 million ransom for each hostage.
He said, "This is a revolution. I'm holding you hostage." And one of the girls in my class just went hysterical.
Young gave each teacher a copy of a bizarre manifesto outlining his apocalyptic plan for the children of Cokeville.
He said, "God equals infinity, infinity equals zero, therefore God does not exist."
David Young was insane, incoherent, and unreasonable. He was a human bomb with a hair trigger.
The ultimate plan was he was going to, after he got the money, blow the building, the children, the adults, himself and his wife, everything. He was going to blow it all up and take us to this place that he referred to as the Brave New World.
While the local police, sheriffs, and the FBI were outside, inside, the sense of panic was escalating.
We had children sick to their stomach, crying, you know, and asking their teachers, "Why can't we go home? I want to go home."
Young grew more agitated. He taped off an area in the middle of the room where only he and Doris could sit. If anyone else stepped inside his square, he said he would detonate the bomb. Strangely, with the Youngs inside the square, the children felt safer.
It was just like this total peace and this comforting feeling just touched everybody.
It was just a feeling just to be relaxed and not to worry that you'll make it through it.
I guess you could explain it as peace. Always, you know, that nothing could happen to us.
The peace was fleeting. Without warning, the bomb went off.
The room was almost instantaneous black. And we had teachers over there that were grabbing kids, trying to get them out through the classroom windows.
This lady grabbed my hand and she pushed me out the window. And I don't know if I would have made it out because I was too afraid to move.
That was the most frightening experience. Not knowing how many left, if any, of my classmates.
Miraculously, the only two people who died that day were David and Doris Young. Everyone outside the so-called magic square survived.
And I heard Mr. Moore and a whole bunch of people start yelling, you know, "We're all here, we all counted, we're all here." And that's when everybody in the town just started yelling, you know, that everybody was there. And it was a great moment. Even though we were sad, kids were burned, kids were hurt, we were very happy we were all alive.
And I could see my youngest daughter, Katie, sitting on the ground. I went to her and I embraced her, and she, at that point, stood and told me, "Mommy, the angels saved us." In the chaos and everything that was happening, I think that maybe I didn't take her literally.
Katie wasn't the only child who talked about angels in the classroom.
As the town struggled to recover from their shared trauma, other children began quietly admitting that they'd been helped by angels too.
I just kind of looked up and I saw this woman, and she told me that to listen to my brother and everything would be okay. And I looked up again and she wasn't there anymore. And then my brother came over and he told me to stay by the window and everything would be okay. And he walked back across the room, and that's when the bomb went off.
A few weeks later, Katie saw the face of her angel again. She gazed out at Katie from her mother's locket.
My mother had passed away when I was 15 and a half years old. And I had very few pictures of her. As soon as I opened the locket, she became so excited, and she looked at this woman in this locket and said, "That's who she is. That's the woman that helped me." She described this woman down to her hair, where she was standing in the room, everything about this woman, as if she had known her all her life.
The woman in the locket was Katie's maternal grandmother, whom the child had never seen. She'd been dead for more than 13 years.
When I saw the photo, they told me that she died, and I came to realization that she had been sent to help me, and that she was my guardian angel.
In the days that followed, trauma counselors heard from many children who had seen their own guardian angel, but not every parent believed what their children were telling them.
I did not want my own son, flesh and blood, going around saying that he saw an angel.
Ron Hartley had 4 children inside Cokeville Elementary when the bomb went off, but he was also the police detective in charge of the investigation. When his own son, Nathan, insisted that he had seen an angel, Hartley tried to be a cop first and a dad second.
I just interviewed and interrogated my son. He said that he was sitting there, and all of a sudden these angels came down through the ceiling, and one of them came up to him and just basically said, "Nathan, I'm your great-grandmother, and what David and Doris are doing is wrong." And he said the bomb's going to go off. And I says, "What was her name, Nathan?" And he says, "I think it was Grandma Meister." Well, I thought I had something there because that I could use to straighten him out, because his grandmother Meister was still alive. So I resorted back to another cop technique, which is bring out the mug shots. We was thumbing through it, and all of a sudden there's a picture of both his grandmothers sitting there. And he just immediately put his little hand on the page so I couldn't turn it. He says, "That's her." He says, "That's my guardian angel." He pointed to my Grandma Elliott, who was sitting right next to Grandma Meister. I says, "Nathan," I says, "why didn't you tell us this before?" And he just looked at me and he says, "Dad, you wouldn't believe me."
Whether or not there were angels in the room that day, some unseen force was at work. Investigators at the scene reported that the bomb was fully functional and should have been lethal.
Should have been 160 people dead.
Bomb technician Haskell says the bomb should have been much more destructive.
From where this window is down here to the north, everything on this side should have been gone. This wall should have been just literally laying down on the grass. All the bricks and everything, it shouldn't even have been here. It should have been gone.
In the aftermath, police videotaped the bombed-out classroom. An image is clearly visible on the southeast wall. Another photo of the area captures what looks like the silhouette of an angelic figure. The children say this is where one of the angels stood.
That was a sign showing us, you know, that yes, this was a miracle. Be grateful.
I think there probably were angels in the room when the bomb went off. And so, like, the image was just impacted on the wall.
There was an angel for everybody watching over him that day.
There's absolutely no way that we could have made it through that without some kind of help.
Angels are fast becoming the latest pop culture icon, but you won't find angel t-shirts and coffee mugs for sale in Cokeville. For the people of Cokeville, including children, parents, even the police, their angelic encounter has been a profound experience. that's deeply personal and can never be trivialized.
Next, are these bizarre deaths the result of alien experimentation or biotech warfare?
I'm still scared as to what can happen.
It was an epic television event that captured the hearts of America.
Some things are worth dying for.
Why are you willing to sacrifice everything you work for?
Now, the miniseries that had everyone talking returns in a dramatic new series.
I'll see you in hell. I'd have to be quick to beat you at killing people.
The way you came charging down there, you could have gotten yourself killed.
Lonesome Dove, the series.
Lonesome Dove, the series, premieres this Tuesday at 8 on Star 64.
The clock is running. For the next 94 hours, your Ford dealers are having their 94-hour clearance. It's the best time and your last chance to save on the 94 models. Save on every 94 car, truck, and van in stock. Get low lease rates, big cash back and option savings, or special low finance rates. But you have to hurry. It's the last 94 hours of the year to save on the 94 models. So get to your tri-state quality Ford dealer today, before time runs out.
Take a break with a quality slate pool table from Eastgate Pools. Hi, I'm Joe Dre of Eastgate Pools. Turn your home into a family fun center. Enjoy the 80 million Americans who enjoy the game of billiards. At Eastgate Pools, we have a large selection of slate pool tables from All-American, A.E. Schmidt, and Imperial International. We also carry a full line of pool cues, billiard lights, and accessories, including the world-famous McDermott cue. Stop in today for the quality you deserve at prices you can afford.
When you've got a hungry family, but not a lot of time, come to our house for dinner tonight.
Come to our house at Grinch.
Eckrich smoked sausage is a hearty, delicious meal you can fix in minutes. And because we use the finest cuts of meat, never settling for second best, you can trust Eckrich smoked sausage for great taste every time.
For the taste you trust, come to us.
For the taste you can trust every time,
come to our house at Grinch. Get it moving. Keep on moving.
The silver bullet has the taste to keep it moving. Coors Light. Naturally brewed for a taste that goes down easy. Coors Light. Keep on moving.
Hey there, come take a peek at our 1995 Mazdas and Mitsubishis. At Jeff Weiler Mazda, sneak a peek at this 95 Protege, only $189 a month. Or this 95 Mazda 626 is priced at only $196 a month. Or at Jeff Weiler Mitsubishi, take a peek at this 95 Mitsubishi Mirage, just $169 a month. At Jeff Weiler Mazda and Mitsubishi, this sneak a peek sale won't last long. Come sneak a peek today with us. Only one place, Jeff Weiler's Eastgate Auto Mall, 1 mile east of I-275 on Route 32, always cheaper in the country.
The world's first documented case of livestock mutilation occurred more than 25 years ago. And the bizarre mutilations continue to this day. Theories about what could be causing these mutilations range from alien experimentation to covert military testing. Law enforcement agencies have investigated, but many ranch owners feel they still don't know who or what is killing their livestock.
I lost 49 head of cattle to the mutilations. I lost them in less than 3 weeks. At that time of the mutilations, and later on, we saw many lights up in the sky. We could not interpret where they were coming from.
The eye was gone. The rectal area had a perfect round cut. The sex organs had been removed. The tongue was gone. No blood, no flies, nothing was around it.
I believe this to be the greatest single unsolved serial crime spree of the 20th century.
They come at night. Mysterious craft piloted by an unseen crew. The morning light reveals yet another mutilated steer. It's happened hundreds of times over 3 decades. State investigators have come and gone. Natural predators, they insist. But cattle ranchers are not satisfied. They've seen things no known could do. Field researcher Chris O'Brien has gained their trust.
This animal is obviously a roadkill, but any report of a downed animal in the area I'd like to check out because of the ongoing problem that we have with the mutilations.
In September of 1967, the first documented animal mutilation occurred in this field and drew worldwide attention. Researchers came from far and wide to investigate. 30 years later, interest has waned, but local ranchers are still forced to cope with dead animals.
The night before, I saw the cow alive, and she had a calf with her, and they looked healthy to me, and by next morning, real early in the morning, she was mutilated.
Eli Hornick has been running cattle in northern New Mexico for more than 14 years. His cattle have been the most recent victims of the mutilation mystery.
Last 2 years, we've lost 10 head of cattle, and 9 yearlings and 1 cow. And you know, you're talking about quite a bit of money. Something that's pretty interesting, if a human doesn't mess with it or something doesn't disturb it, the birds, coyotes, they'll just leave it alone.
Hornick's cattle showed the classic signs of mutilation: precise incisions, a conspicuous lack of blood, and no physical evidence of a predator, man or animal, at the crime scene.
There's never any tracks, never any blood. It's a real clean deal.
Normally, when you arrive at an animal mutilation site, you'll find basically that there's no evidence whatsoever. There's no blood at all. There's no tracks, no cigarette butts. All the evidence indicates that the animals are being dropped from the air. So it seems to most researchers that the animals are being taken somewhere else, being experimented on, and then being dropped back where they were found.
Livestock Inspector Jerry Valerio has investigated the mutilations, and they fit the pattern he's seen in dozens of other cases.
The incisions are done real precise. Every incision that we've dealt with has been almost identical to every animal that has been mutilated.
Most of these cattle mutilations features perfectly circular cuts that have indication of high heat that has been used to make the cuts.
Despite the consistent pattern of bloodless surgical incisions, state and federal authorities insist predators like coyotes and foxes are responsible. For them, case closed.
I've seen a lot of animals that have been torn up by coyotes and other predators, birds mostly. And these incisions were just like a doctor would do in the hospital.
When you see an animal of this nature, it's been mutilated, it's clean, no blood, it's not done by predators.
Dr. John Altschuler is a pathologist who studied tissue samples from hundreds of cattle mutilations over the past 5 years.
A predator, even with the accuracy of gnawing and biting, would have jagged borders. The fact that the tissue at the incisional areas is very firm and very hard and looks burned. And the microscopic evidence clearly indicates that heat has been applied, and predators, to my knowledge, cannot do that.
What could create these burnt-edged incisions is a highly sophisticated portable laser.
Lasers have the ability to actually cauterize the wound, stop the bleeding as you're cutting.
But no portable laser is powerful enough to cut and cauterize masses of livestock tissue. At Kirtland Air Force Base, Colonel Michael Prairie demonstrates the world's most precise portable laser.
Going through a 1/4 inch of flesh, you'd have to take several passes, maybe 5 or 10 passes to get through. The precision of the cut is limited to the precision of the operator. If you needed to make a circular cut with very tight tolerances, you'd have to find some other way, some kind of mechanical system to make such a cut.
If our government doesn't have laser technology capable of these mutilations, who or what does?
The causes behind these mutilations is absolutely unknown. I believe that there's multiple groups involved in this for various reasons. The tissue that is being excised from these animals is the fastest regenerating tissue in the bodies and have residual elements of their environment in them.
Anonymous groups with advanced technology mutilating livestock? Sounds impossible, but consider this new theory. Biotech companies are fighting a super-secret war to be the first to find an artificial substitute for human blood. A lot of them are using the hemoglobin in cattle blood as their base. The first company to develop this artificial blood could have a $10 billion market all to themselves. The stakes are high, and they don't want the competition to know what they're doing.
Whenever these mutilations occur, there was always a sighting of helicopters around the area.
In a lot of cases, strange lights have been seen around mutilation sites, And most often, helicopters are seen in and around mutilation sites. It's like someone is monitoring these areas where these animal deaths are occurring. People ask me, why are they leaving these carcasses lying around these pastures? I think these carcasses are taken and then returned is somehow to instill fear in the rancher.
I am over my anger, but I'm still very confused, and I'm still scared as to what can happen in the future.
There's somebody somewhere that knows what's doing this. You know, we need to get it out in the open and try to get it stopped.
Get people to report these cases and get the help of state and federal law enforcement officials, we're spinning our wheels. There are no answers. There's just thousands of questions and thousands of dead animals.
Since our report, rancher Eli Hornick has discovered yet another mutilated steer on his property. Like the livestock in our report, this animal appears to have died from laser-precise incisions and an enormous loss of blood.
Next, a rare discovery leads experts to believe that monsters exist.
There may be far more species on the planet than we thought previously.
The search for ancient creatures.
Pardon me. Ciao. What would you say if your customers could get salon quality products at a fraction of the price?
No me interesa per niente. Vattene, vattene.
Introducing Salon Style. Salon quality, sensible prices. At stores everywhere.
I'm starving. I could go for a pizza.
Large, 2-topping, crunchy, thin crust pizza and get a medium 1-topping pizza free.
Orville Redenbacher created a new bag so more of his big, fluffy, irresistible butterfly kernels could pop than ever before. How much more? Let's put it this way. You'll notice Orville Redenbacher's new, bigger bag. Make room for it.
If you had Corningware, you could make everything from roast pork to baked chicken, grilled vegetables, steamed shrimp and rice, ice cream parfait, even casseroles.
What's a casserole?
So whether you're cooking out or cooking in, cook it in Corningware.
The power of Alka-Seltzer Plus cold medicine is taking shape in new Alka-Seltzer Plus liquid gels, rushing concentrated medicines to relieve your worst cold. Rush relief with new Alka-Seltzer Plus liquid gels.
Until recently, most biologists thought science had discovered all the big, obvious animals with warm blood and fur. They contend, therefore, that Bigfoot and Yeti must be simply mythological creatures. But last spring, biologists on a field trip along the Vietnam-Laos border proved their colleagues wrong. They found not one, but 3 new species of mammal.
Just a year old, she's a legend come to life. The creature locals have described as an antelope with gills now has a scientific name, the Vu Quang ox. In the same region, biologists found the remains of 2 additional new species. The giant muntjac is a saber-toothed deer, and the slow-running deer is a creature who should have been as easy to catch up with as the name implies.
This is in North Vietnam in the very mountainous region. Very few people have been in the region to begin with. It's an extremely rich area. And one of the things that intrigued me was the suggestion that all these new creatures are very ancient.
The mammals found in Southeast Asia are not the only ancient creatures to resurface after their supposed extinction.
The coelacanth is a sort of fish that was discovered off the coast of South Africa. And that is a fish that belongs to a group of fish which was thought to have become extinct about 80 million years ago. It is now thought by some people that there may be as many as 30 million species of organisms on the planet or more. The point is
is that we have reason to believe now that there may be far more species on the planet than we thought previously.
Cryptozoologists like Roy Mackle believe the clues to discovering some of these 30 million undiscovered species can be found in legends and persistent folk tales.
Back in the 60s, when we first took seriously that perhaps behind such things as Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, the Sasquatch, there might be real animals, we were just laughed at.
I am a zoologist. I study creatures which are known to exist, and I also discover new unknown creatures. But every time we go out and we discover something new, the cryptozoologists treat this somehow as being a victory for their side. But the new kinds of animals that turn up are turned up by people like me.
But cryptozoologists feel there's a kind of conceit in a mainstream scientific community that won't acknowledge the thousands of fantastic sightings reported by laymen every year. Is it possible that among the millions of undiscovered species, we may find dinosaurs and the humanoid primate legend has named Sasquatch and Yeti?
There have been mainstream zoologists who have said that no more large quadrupeds, that is, four-legged animals, are going to be discovered, and they've been proved wrong over and over again.
That's the great thing about Vu Quang. He is, you know, again, an area in one of the most densely populated nations on Earth, in a small area, and yet these things are unknown to science until just recently. So there's a fair amount of territory left on Earth where scientists really haven't exhaustively explored the area. And I do expect a lot will be found.
The newly discovered mammals have been part of Vietnamese and Laotian mythology for centuries. It wasn't until they were captured and identified by biologists, however, that they officially existed. Some cryptozoologists contend the same will be true for centuries of reported Bigfoot and Yeti sightings. They believe it's only a matter of time until these creatures are found to exist officially.
Now get any medium pizza, a single order of regular breadsticks, and Pepsi delivered for just $10.99. A great deal on a great meal from Pizza Hut.
It's not only men
10-4, we're on our way.
policing our streets.
I took off after him. Sheer, stark terror.
You took the risks without thinking about them.
I only knew I had to let somebody out there know I was in trouble.
True stories of passion and compassion.
I keep seeing his face.
Sacrifice and survival.
He knew where I lived.
Now, 5 times a week.
See you, Mom. See ya.
Top Cops.
Weeknights at 11 on Star 64.
Remember last year? Well, this year, Century Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling will protect you from the cold. Their factory-trained technicians will assure you of whole house comfort. And now Century's having its pre-season sale. Get great prices on Amana furnaces with no interest or payments till May 1995. With your Amana purchase, choose from an electronic programmable thermostat or an air duct cleaning absolutely free. Century has 10-year warranties on parts and labor. Also get plumbing repairs and emergency drain cleaning. Century Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling, on guard 24 hours a day for your comfort.
Right now, you can get 50% off all lenses at LensCrafters. 50% off every lens we carry. Looks good. LensCrafters, 50% off all lenses event. This is a great offer. People should definitely not miss this.
Hurry, LensCrafters offer ends soon.
Announcing the Casual Corner Fall Suit Sale. Now for a limited time only, every Casual Corner suit is 25 to 40% off. You'll find the latest styles to suit your style at Casual Corner. Fashion that works.
This year's fall meet at Turfway Park should be something special. The purses are bigger and the horses are better than ever before. And on September 24th, Turfway hosts the first ever Kentucky Cup. It's a $1 million day of racing that will feature some of the best horses from around the world. So come on out for our fall meet, because just like everything else in thoroughbred racing, it'll go by fast. There's just nothing like the thrill of racing, and there's nothing like the thrill of Turfway Park.
Hey, how would you like to sneak a peek at our 95 Nissans? They're here at Jeff Weiler Nissan, and we've got them on sale. Take a peek at this 95 Altima starting at just $13,990. Or this hot new 240 SX starts at just $15,147. Or how about the all-new Maxima starting at just $19,990? Price lower than the 1994 Maxima. Jeff Weiler Nissan's Sneak a Peek sale is what you've been waiting for. Jeff Weiler Nissan, located at Jeff Weiler Eastgate Auto Mall, 1 mile east of I-275 on Route 32, always cheaper in the country.
If you've had a paranormal experience, call the Sightings hotline at 1-900-933-SIGHT. That's 1-900-933-7444. Each call 65 cents a minute. Average call lasts 3 minutes. Sightings is also online. Our email address is sightings@aol.com. On the next edition of Sightings, the military has a new secret weapon. Was this technology recovered from an alien spacecraft?
I can't say for sure what we saw was of this Earth.
Then, this woman knows what your pet is thinking.
Sing, we can talk. This is Mama's Peaches.
And a psychic detective's vision of murder.
I just need to touch something that was on the victim. I touch it and I can become them.
That's next time. Until then, remember, no mystery is closed to an open mind. For Sightings, I'm Tim White.
If you'd like to save up to 50% on your contact lenses, eyeglasses, and eye exams, call for a free Lens Express catalog and find out how you can start saving right away. Deal yourself a winning hand with the new electronic Caesar's Palace Poker and Blackjack games from Tiger Electronics. You just can't lose.
Instalight by Armatron with easy-to-see night vision dial. Superb water-resistant quality and outstanding value. Armatron, the best price quality watch in America.
Tomorrow at noon, Andy and a grown-up Opie reminisce in America's favorite small town in Return to Mayberry with Andy Griffith and Ron Howard. Up next, Raymond Burr determines the cause of death in Perry Mason, the case of the musical murders. Next on Star 64.
All the double-decker taste you love, now smothered in